All right, guys, good evening. My name is Will Crowden,
Even
W4ETA. For the ones of y'all that don't know me, because there's a few of you on here that I don't think I know. Uh, I'm the Region 2 director, also the Region 2 coordinator for the association, also as Riley considers me, the deputy director. But tonight we're going to have just a little short presentation over Parks on the Air. It's more of going to be like an entry level type thing. But, just like anything else in life, you never know when you may learn something. And definitely if you have anything to share, because by all means, I'm not the end all know it all. So if you have anything to share that you feel may be relevant, feel free to jump in and share. So, not sure why that wasn't going forward. So just a little bit of overview about POTA. Parks on the Air was designed to promote amateur radio and emergency preparedness and increase the use of state and federal lands. And it stemmed from the National Parks on the Air program that happened in 2016. And it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Everyone is all volunteers, so no one's getting paid to do it. And currently, there's just over 200 countries, islands, and territories that are involved in the program. And as of the day before yesterday, when I looked, there's more than 500,000 registered users. And up to date, there's been close to around 3 million contacts made with the program worldwide. And just remember, even though, some people will say, oh, you can't use the work bands for parks on there because it's a contest. But it's not a contest. So 12, 17, 30, 60 meters, all available to be used for parks on there. So in the United States of America, currently there's 12,398 POTA entities consisting of state national parks, state national forests, state and national historic sites, historic trails, wildlife refuges and wildlife management areas, or wildlife refuges and wildlife management areas, national grasslands, and state beaches. Currently in our good state of Tennessee, there's 265 entities, and I'm sure before the year they're going end of the year they're going to add a couple more. And there's around 29,000 some odd activators and 49,000 some odd hunters just in the U.S. alone. So a hunter versus an activator, what's the difference? So a hunter is just somebody that goes to Parks on the Air, creates an account, and pretty much once you create that account, you don't have to do anything extra from there. When you work stations that are doing POTA activations, they're going to put you in their log, and when they upload their logs to the system, you automatically get credit for those activations. So pretty much it's a one and done thing if you only have interest in being a hunter. But then you decide, well, hey, what if I want to get out and do some POTA activating? And to me, being an activator is the fun part. I mean, I like hunting, but getting out, enjoying nature, and getting on there and making those contacts is the real fun part of POTA. So you just got to create an account at parksontheair.com if you don't have one already. And then you get all your equipment together, go out and set up at one of the Parks on the Air entities. You have to make at least 10 contacts in the log, and then you upload your log to the POTA database. So, pretty simple process, no big headache about it. So, to sign up, you just visit parksontheair.com. You're going to click the Help Getting Started tab, and then you're going to sign up for POTA. And the biggest thing is that they like for you to do is make sure you read the rules and FAQs because you see a lot of comments in the POTA Facebook group of, you know, people asking questions. And if they would read the rules and FAQs, that would take care of a lot of that. And those volunteers that do the program, I mean, they're there to answer questions if it's not in the rules and FAQs, but they have a lot of other stuff going on in the background that we don't see on a daily basis. We need to let those guys try and concentrate on that. So the minimum equipment that you're going to need to go out and activate, you're going to need a transceiver, of course. Can't do it without a radio, and then a power source, whether it be battery or if you're operating from inside your vehicle, or you may have like a small generator even plugged into the main power at a state park somewhere at a pavilion. And then, of course, you're going to need feed line unless you're using an antenna that's hooked directly to your radio. And then you're going to need a antenna. Antenna pick your poison. Use what you decide feels like works the best for you. And then you're going to need a means of logging, whether it be the good old paper and pen or unless you want to use an electronic logging program. So the common activator gear that a lot of people use, transceiver, you have to pick. Do you want to use something that's going to be QRP, or do you want to use something that's going to be QRO and take you all the way up to 100 watts? It's pretty much just the activator's choice. And then, of course, you'll need your microphone or headset, or microphone and headphones. Excuse me. And then you're going to need your power cable. And then batteries, you still got people that use the old SLA batteries for the power source. Those are fine, but remember they have their limitations. And then a lot of us nowadays are using lithium iron phosphate or LiPo4 batteries. BioWinnow is a good product, but I've got some batteries that I've bought off Amazon that work just fine. And then, of course, to make sure the batteries stay topped off, you've got solar power. And then, you can also use a power supply if there's somewhere to plug that power supply up, or you've got a generator available. And then when it comes to your antenna, the biggest thing you've got to remember about is your activation footprint. You don't want to go in an area where there's going to be potentially a lot of people and set up an antenna and then have to worry about people tripping over it or knocking it down or falling into it. So think about how much room it's going to take to set up your antenna and what's going to be in the way, and maybe use a little flag and tape for it, because I can assure you, you can go to somewhere like a wildlife management area where there's not been a soul set foot in 6 months, and it's like the minute you put an antenna up, it's like bugs being drawn to a bug zapper. People just start showing up. But the typical antennas a lot of people use, the most common is a ground mounted vertical, or an in-fed half wave. And then depending on what band you're using, you can use a directional antenna, which you're not going to carry something like a 20-meter Yagi out into the field. And then your mobile mounted antennas like the Yaesu ATAS, the Tar Heels, the ham sticks. Those are popular to use, especially during the when the weather's not ideal and during the winter months. And then feed line, typically you're going to want something that's small, flexible, and easy to handle. So a lot of people either use RG316 or RG8X because they're small and easy to handle for the most part. And then your logging means electronic logging. When you upload those logs, those have to be sent in an ADI format. And most of the programs that will typically do an ADI format that are commonly used is the N3FJP, which is a Windows-based program, and then the Ham2K portable logger, or as we know it as the Polo logger, which is a program that a lot of people use. I know I use it on Android, and then the Ham RS, which I don't have a lot of experience with it. Um, and if there's somebody in here that uses like a Mac product or Linux, does anybody have any recommendations for any logging softwares for those? Okay, sound like everybody's probably either using Windows or using a portable device. And then other radio accessories, you're going to need a computer. Oh, my misspelling on tablet, computer, tablet, or phone. If you decide that, if you're logging on pen and paper, but then you want to do um, like FT4, FT8, or any of the digital modes. And then, of course, you'll need it if you want to spot yourself. And then you're going to need your audio device cables to connect those devices to your radio. And then your CW key if you decide that you want to do some CW while you're out. And then, unless your radio has one built in, if you're using one of the like a Zygu or an ICOM 705, you probably want to have an antenna analyzer. That way, you can keep a good check on your antenna every time you change bands or change your setup. And then maybe you'll need an antenna tuner if you're using a wire antenna or something that's not a resonant antenna, or if you want to do different bands. And then your patch cables to connect your tuner to your radio and your antenna. And then always carry an assortment of connectors and adapters with you, because you never know when you're going to have to adapt to something different. And then any type of mounting needs that you're going to need. And then convenience items, make sure, especially if you're going to be out there for an extended period, take something to drink, something to eat, especially if it's hot out. That way you stay hydrated. And then, you may need a chair, a table, because you may go somewhere where there's no place to sit. I've been to a few POTA sites that have nice pavilions and they have a table, but they don't have chairs. So you may always want to at least keep a chair with you. And then head covering and sunscreen. That way you can protect the head, because Me being the fair skinned guy, I'm very susceptible to sunburn, so I always want to protect my head. And then you may be in an area like a wildlife management area during the hunting season where you want to wear a reflective vest because you don't want to be mistaken for an animal and somebody shoot at you. And then the good old TP, just in case there's not a restroom facility around. But remember, make sure you clean up after yourself. And then any type of tools. Usually in my kits, I carry like I've got just some Allen wrenches, a small nut driver set, screwdriver, a pair of pliers, and then some zip ties and some electrical tape because you never know when you're going to have to make a repair in the field. And then I usually try and keep trash bags with me because I'm a firm believer if I'm going to go out into a state park, national park, wildlife management area, it's not going to hurt for me to take a little bit of time to clean up because not everybody is good like us and cleans up after themselves. So I always try and pick up a little bit. The pickup tool also comes in handy for that, so you're not touching other people's trash. And then maybe some gloves if you're picking up some stuff and don't want to take a chance of getting splinters or getting poked with something. And then a knife just in case you need to cut anything. And then rainwear and insect repellent because there's always bugs and we always have to worry about the rain, especially in Tennessee. And then always make sure you've got a first aid kit. That way, just in case you get any little boo boos, you're going to pull on somebody else that may have an injury. And then if it's wintertime, you want a heat source. If it's warm outside, may carry a battery operated rechargeable fan with you. And then always make sure that you've got your extra repair parts, like maybe some wire, um, some coax connectors, Anderson power poles, fuses, and then the pickup tool like we talked about. And then I have personal protection there, just as a knife, a firearm, something to protect yourself in case somebody unfriendly runs up on you, or you end up face to face with some wildlife that you don't want to be running into. So when you go to POTA.app, because when you sign up, you go to parksontheair.com, but then when you start doing log upload, spotting, you're going to actually use POTA.app. But unfortunately, it's not really an application, it's a website, but you can go do it on any type of device through a web browser. So when you first go in there, you can click over on the left hand side, the little waffle button at the top, and you're going to get this sidebar menu that's going to come up. And the first thing that you're going to have if you click where your call sign is, you're going to come up with my account. So what that's going to show you is it's going to show your call sign, your name, your location, and then any other call signs that you've had in the past. And then over here, it's going to show your all-time statistics of how many activations you had, how many unique parks you've activated in. And then if you have any awards, it's going to show those in this area. And then when you come down under that, it's going to have your recent activations that you've done. And then it's also going to show the recent hunter QSOs with the last people that you have worked as a hunter. Then when you go to the add spot, that's going to be where if you go out and do an activation, you're going to add your information in here and of where you're activating at and what frequency you're on. And then maybe you can just put the comments of like if you're doing single sideband or FT8. Just remember when you put the frequency in, make sure you put it in kilohertz. So leave that decimal point out because it won't accept it. And then also, if you're working somebody as a hunter and you think, hey, I want to respot this person, then you go in here and you put their call sign in as the activator and then their frequency and park reference. And then you can put in like, I worked this person, they're 5'9" in Southeast Tennessee or any other comments you want to put. And then if you know on a specific day that you're going to go out and do an activation, you can click add activation and you can actually schedule your activation at the park you're going to be at and then the typical time that you plan to start and end, and then the start date and end date, and then the frequencies or the bands that you expect to be on and what modes you may be working. That way, it kind of gives people a heads up if they're looking for specific parks that you're going to be out there. That way, they can hunt you. And then when you look at the spots page, On the active spots, it's going to come up. You're going to have some filters that you can pick from up here at the top if you only want to see certain bands, certain modes, certain countries, and then if you want it to hide or show the people that have already went QRT, because that's one of the things about the spots is when you're finished doing your activation, you can go in your comments and put QRT, and it's going to tell everybody on the spots page that you're finished operating. So, and then you can sort it by the time. And then when you look at the actual spot itself, it's going to have the activator call sign, the park number they're at, and then the name of the park, the state they're in, and then the band and mode that they're working. And then, so like this is a FT8 operator. So the good thing about FT8 is once you've been spotted once, reverse beacon network on FT8, FT4, and CW, as long as the reverse beacon network, someone's hearing you, it's going to respot for you, so you don't have to worry about not being respotted. And then it's going to tell the last time that that station was heard. And so you can say that person was last heard 21 seconds ago. And then it's got a button for a respot, and then it shows how many times that person has been spotted. Then when you come over to scheduled activations, like if you go in and schedule an activation that you know you're going to be doing, you can look and see the call sign, the park number they're going to be at, the park name, state, the bands that they plan to work, unless they put specific frequencies in. But you know, you put a frequency in there, and then somebody's on it, and you have to pick a different frequency, and then the dates and times they plan to be there, and then in the comments, like he put overnight camping, POTA working all HF bands. So he's pretty much going to be working the whole night and just about on any band that's going to be open. And then you have the option for the POTA maps. And when this opens up, just like on Google Maps, you can zoom in, zoom out, look at certain places. And any of these yellow dots where you see on the map is a POTA entity. So if you click on that yellow dot, it's going to pop up to you the park name, the park number, and then you can click on more information. And when that opens up, it's going to tell you the park name, the park reference number, and then it's going to give you GPS coordinates that the mapping coordinator entered for that spot. And a lot of times I've been to POTA entities, especially in other states where the coordinates are not 100% correct. So do your homework before you go so you don't spend half your day driving around trying to find somewhere to set up and activate. And then it's going to tell you what grid square that park's in. And then it's going to give you a overall area map. And then the majority of them will have a website. I know, especially in Tennessee, the wildlife management areas, it's a little bit better to go to the website and pull up the Tennessee Wildlife Resources map for that specific area. And then it's going to tell you the means of activating, if you can do it from your car or if you have to walk in. And then it's going to show you the park leaders for that park. So who's activated it the most, who's had the most QSOs there, and then it's going to show you the recent activations over here on this side. So then if you click on the park list, it's going to show you a list of all the parks. You've got different filters up here that you can select. You can also select it by country, by state. So if you select Tennessee and then you go over here and click that you want to see the park that's had the least amount of activations, that way, you know, if it's somewhere that's never been activated, then you can go there and activate that park for the first time. But then it's also going to show you how many times you've activated from that park and then how many times you've hunted an operator at that park. And then you can search for a specific park. And then if you click download and you download a KML file, if you use a program like Google My Maps, because I'm working on activating every park in the state of Tennessee. So I have a map on Google My Maps of all the parks in Tennessee that I've made for myself. That way, every time I activate that park, I can go in there and change that park dot on the map to a different color. That way, I know that I've activated it. I'm going to select a different park when I'm looking to plan out a multi-park mapping route. And then if you go over and look at top activators, it'll show you who is the top activator in the POTA program right now. These stats are not up to date, but it'll tell you how many activations they've done, how many parks they've activated, and then the total amount of QSOs that they've had. And then it breaks it down into CW, data, and phone QSOs. And I wished I had the time to activate like some of these people do. And then the top hunters, the same thing as well. Um, their call sign, the amount of parks that they've worked, and then the total amount of QSOs they've had, and then of course CW data and phone. And you can go in there and search. Instead of all time on these, you can change it to specific years, or if you want to search your call sign and see where you're at, you just click on the search line and type your call sign. And then POTA also does some official events, like the New Year's week event. You get a certificate if you do any activations or do any hunting of the first week of the new year, January 1st through the 7th. And then, of course, the Support Your Parks events every third full weekend of January, April, May, and October. Any activation or any hunting QSOs during that time frame, you're going to get a certificate for the Support Your Parks weekends as well. And then the awards, if you click on my awards, it's going to show you the awards that you've got, and then any extra endorsements. Because if you look at awards, you say, "Well, I'm pretty sure I have another award for that," but it may not show up here at the top. So then look over here and see if it's listed as an endorsement, like this one here. Um, this hunter award for working 600 different units, and then you see it has an endorsement over here for phone. So before you go emailing the POTA people saying, "Hey, where's my award at?" Make sure that you don't have any endorsements in there that are showing with it. And then also on the awards page, it'll show you the amount of unique parks that you've activated in these graphs. And then it'll show you how many unique parks you've hunted. And then late shift activator contacts, late shift hunter contacts, early shift activator contacts, and early shift hunter contacts. Those, when you look at that specific park page about that park, like if you open it up on the map, it's going to tell you the criteria for early and late shift contacts on there. And every park will be a little bit different. And then your entities hunted, and then your park to park contacts where you've worked somebody that was activating in another park. And then it's also going to show you get the boxes here to where you can see how many states that you've activated in and how many states that you've hunted other activators in. And then you have the activated all references. So, like if you've activated in a state, it's going to show you how many more activations you've still got to activate every reference in that state. And my number in Tennessee is not better. Still got a long way to go, but we'll get there at some point. And then $100 references in a specific state or specific country. Sometimes you get lucky, like Sable Island. I did a work somebody there that was doing an activation, and that's the only reference in that area. So that one's done for me. And then over here, your kilo awards. So this shows you when you've had 1,000 activate or 1,000 contacts in a single park, and then you get a kilo award for every additional 1,000 contacts that you make at that park. And then your repeat offender activator, when you've activated an individual park 20 times, you get an award for that. And then every 20 times after that, you activate it. Same deal, you get another award. And then the same deal with the repeat offender hunter. Every time you've worked that same park 20 times, you get an award for it. And then the activator 6-pack and hunter 6-pack, those are 6-meter specific awards. So on the activator 6-pack, you have to get at least 10 contacts and 6 different parks and that's 10 contacts at one, 10 at another. So you have to get 10 contacts and 6 different parks on 6 meters to qualify for that award. And then for the hunter 6-pack, you just make contacts with 6 different parks on 6 meters. And then the N1CC activator and hunter. So that award, you have to work someone on, or not the same person, but you have to work 10 different bands at 10 different parks to get that award. That's why I always tell everybody, when you go out and do a POTA activation, unless you're going to hurry, leave no band behind, because when I go do POTA activations, I've worked every band from 80 meters all the way down through 70 centimeters, including 2 meters, 220, and 70 centimeters. The only band that typically use band I've not made a contact on is 160, and because usually I'm not out that late at night or early in the morning to do that. And then the same way with your 100 N1cc, 10 different parks on 10 different bands. And then your activator operator to operator, and then hunter operator to operator is 50 contacts with the same operator. Um, no specific time frame. So then when you go look at your My Stats page, um, it's going to show you the parks that you've activated, and it's going to tell you that you've had X amount of activations with X amount of attempts. So if you don't get a successful activation, then it's going to say that you attempted it but didn't get an activation. Then it's going to show you the amount of unique parks you've activated with the amount of QSOs that you've had. And then under activated bands, it's going to show you the bands that you've activated, what modes that you've activated on, and how many total QSOs that you've had on that band. And then the 100 parks, it's just going to go in order by state, and it's going to show you how many unique parks that you've worked in that state or country, and then how many um, QSOs that you've had in that state or country. And then the 100 bands the same way. It's the same way with the activated bands. It just shows each band how many QSOs and then the modes. And then when you look at my activation, sometimes I have to go back and reference some of this stuff because once I upload my log to QRZ, somebody may, send me an email or their log info may be different. So I may have to go back and reference some of this stuff. So it's good to be able to pull this information. You can go in here and look at your activations. You can just search by park identifier. You can search by date, and then you just go back and you can view all your contacts in that activation. That way, if you need to go back and reference something to make a change. And the same way with the My Hunter log, you can see all the contacts that from where you've worked someone. And then if it puts the blue up beside the orange, that means you've worked them as a park to park. So you were in a park, they were in a park. So my log uploads, the easiest way to upload your logs to POTA is if you're using a computer program like I normally use N3FJP because it's a really great program, makes it really simple to upload. You just go in here, click, you find your file, and then it's gonna put boxes next to these two questions. You click both of those and you click upload, and then it's gonna come back and tell you if there were any errors that you need to correct it, and it'll show up down here and it'll be red and won't be processed. And it may sometimes turn blue and say processing if they're in the middle of an update on the website or if there's any issues that the system didn't like with what it saw. But uh, it's pretty easy to use. And then they also, for the folks that use paper and pen, they have a manual log entry. Um, so when you go in there, you put the file in, it's going to pop up the file name, the date, and then it's going to show your call sign, the park number you activated at, and then show the location, how many QSOs that you made on each mode, and then your total. And be mindful that, like the Trail of Tears National Historic Trail, I think runs through 11 states. So more than likely, if you activate something that's in multiple states, it's going to have a drop down here, and you're going to have to select what state you're in before to let you upload. And then if all that information looks correct, you just click these two check boxes and upload file for validation. And then if you have to do the manual log entry, you just have your paper that you did all your logging on. You have to come in here and type in each individual QSO at a time. Now it's a little bit of a pain, but that's why using the electronic logging means are a lot easier. So, if you've got 150 QSOs, that's 150 you're going to have to sit there and upload unless you do it while you're doing your activation, which could be kind of challenging. So before going to activate, make sure you use the POTA.app map to find a location. And then you want to select your desired park entity and also research the park on potamap.us and Google Maps before you go. That way you can find specific park boundaries And then this is one of the wildlife management areas just outside of Von Orr, Tennessee. And that's the good thing about using other websites to find where you want to go, because this was not in the area of the GPS coordinates that was on the POTA.app website. But then when I went to the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency page, then it tells you exactly where the parking area is. It tells you exactly where there's if there's a pavilion or some type of shelter. That way, if you need somewhere to go sit out of the rain or the sun. And then the biggest thing is know before you go, review that park's information, because if they have restrictions on putting antennas in trees or putting stakes in ground, you don't want to go in there and make the park staff mad and get kicked out and told not to come back. And then make sure you check the weather forecast to make sure that you're prepared for that day. And then make sure that you check the band conditions. But can't always go by band conditions, because I've been out on days that it said all the bands were poor and made an abundance of QSOs, and I've been out on days that it said the bands were good, and it's been a struggle to get 3 or 4 QSOs. So make sure you read your park rules before you plan to go activate. And just remember that when you go to a POTA entity, all equipment must be within those park boundaries. And then, unless you find a good hiding spot to stay away from other people, be prepared for park staff or Joe Public to ask questions. And just remember to always be courteous with your park staff, because they can tell you at any time, hey, you have to leave. So if they have any questions, I've never had a negative interaction. Even in 23 different states of activating, I've never had a negative interaction with a park staff employee. And they've always been very friendly. And make sure you follow the directions. If they say, hey, you can activate, but you need to go over to this specific area, pack your stuff up, move over there, and don't ask any questions. And then just remember that we don't own any frequency, so be courteous. And that also goes back to those other operators. It would be nice if everybody would be courteous to us, because sometimes you get people that want to be that sad ham that wants to just dead key over you or tune on top of you. And then make sure that you leave the area better than you found it. That's one of the big things about parks on the air, is we want to make it to where when we leave, nobody knows that we were ever there. And most of all, you want to be safe and have fun. That's what parks on the air is all about, is getting out and having fun. Once you get to your park to do your activation, the best thing to do is locate all facilities and informational areas, restrooms, park office, etc., if it's somewhere that you've never been to. And feel free to check with a park staff member for great areas to set up. Um, Back earlier this year, I went to a park activation in California, and I figured as stringent as California is on most of their stuff, I thought, they've got to have rules about not putting antennas in trees, putting holes in the ground. And I emailed the park a couple of days before I went. Within like 30 minutes of sending the email, I got an email back from the park manager saying, y'all are welcome here. Ham radio is great. And he gave me a exact coordinates to a good area to go set up, where I wouldn't have to worry about people, coming through, running over antennas, bothering me. So it was a really good experience. And make sure that you find a safe, open, and unreserved area to set up your gear. So, if you go to a pavilion that may potentially be reserved, make sure you look for signs, because you may get in the middle of your activation, only have 3 or 4 contacts. Somebody show up and say, hey, we've got this reserved for the day. Sorry, you got to leave. And then, if within walking distance, make sure you take all the items that you're going to need, because you don't want to leave your radio sitting there and have to run back to your car. And then just make sure you get everything set up and get ready to activate. So when you do your activation, spin the VFO just like I'm spin the VFO, listen for an open frequency within your privileges, and ask a couple of times if the frequency is in use. And then spot yourself on the POTA spot if you have the ability to do so. And then just call CQ Parks on there, reply with the information to the stations that answer you, and log your contact. Say 73 QRZ. And that's the thing about Parks on there. You can have as long of a QSO with somebody as you want, or you can just keep it to the basic information and move on. So let me So this is just a quick little clip of um, my typical POTA CQ, and then a contact that I work with somebody. Hopefully, everybody can hear the video okay. CQ POTA, CQ POTA, CQ Parks on the air from Whiskey 4 Echo Tango Alpha. Calling CQ from US 3949. CQ Parks on the air and standing by. November 5, Victor Mike November. Good morning. You were 5-9 into US 3949 QSL. All right, Billy. Thanks for the 5-9 from Arkansas. And thank you for hunting this morning. Have a great rest of your weekend in 73. QRZ Parks on the air from Whiskey 4 Echo Tango Alpha. Hey, man, just on like that. And the biggest thing is make sure that you be courteous to the people that are hunting you, because, they're taking time out of their day to hunt you, and you want them to, you want those guys to put you in their ham alerts. That way, every time you go out and activate, hopefully they're going to be looking for you. So, what's considered a successful activation? 10 unique QSOs within the same UTC date. And then, I always like to log band frequency, the mode I'm on, and of course the POTA entity. And normally, what you're going to exchange at minimum is your call sign and park number, and then you can give them a signal report. You don't have to, but I always like to give signal reports because a lot of people are curious as to how well they're sounding, and I'm one of the people that actually give legit signal reports. I don't do 5-9 to everybody, especially if I have to ask them their call sign 3 or 4 times. And just a few beginner tips. It's okay to be nervous. It's a new adventure. The best thing to do is tag along with an experienced activator to learn from their mistakes, because I can assure you, as many activations that I have done, I still make a mistake at least every couple of times that I go. And my biggest thing to say is, for your first few solo activations, make sure that you stay close to home, because you're either going to forget something or you're going to get out there and then you'll be like, oh, heck, I need this, and forgot it at home. That way, if you've not got too far into your setup, you can run back home and get what you need. And then make sure that you charge all your batteries the day before if you're taking batteries, because like my third activation, I thought, I didn't use my battery much at last activation. It'll be good. And got out there and 2 contacts in, battery died. And then you can pre-schedule your activation on the activation tab on the website, and you can even pre-plan your contacts. Usually when I go out and do an activation, if I'm planning on doing something on like maybe 6 meters or 2 meters or 220 or even 70 centimeters, I'll reach out to people that I know that are somewhat close by and say, hey, I'm going to be in this park at this time if you want to listen on for me on 223.5, and that way we can get a few 220 contacts in the walk. And like I said earlier, even if the bands appear dead, don't let it prevent an attempt, because you must get out there and have a successful activation. And if the weather isn't desirable, operate inside your car or operate inside of a building at wherever you're doing your operation from. And if you're not comfortable working pileups, spin the VFO and work other POTA stations. That's one of my big things about POTA is I feel like that, once you get out there, you get comfortable and start working those pileups, it only helps you become a better operator, because you get used to, like, now when I go out and do an activation, I listen for the stations that are very, very low instead of the stations that are, booming through 20 over. I listen for the guy that may be a 4-1 and try and pick him out, because that's what my ears have been trained to do, is pick out the little guy that you can barely hear. And you can use digital modes or CW. I've been learning CW, and usually if I want to dabble CW a little bit when I go out and do an activation, if I'm not in a hurry, then I'll get the CW key out. And I'll hunt people that are doing POTA and work them as a park to park. And then, like I talked about earlier, don't forget about VHF, UHF bands. Leave no bands behind, because there's quite a few people that monitor 5 too, especially. So give every band a chance. You don't have to spend, 5 minutes on there calling CQ. If you don't get somebody, you can move on. And then just make sure that you ignore the sad hams, because there's a lot of people out there that don't like parks on their program. If somebody's, dead keying over top of you or tuning over top of you, if you pretend like they're not even there, just like there's some noise on the band, they'll move on eventually because they'll get tired of not getting your attention. And then remember that no operator in that owns any frequency. You don't have to move, but be kind and move. Especially, I've had people come on before that I'll be on a frequency activating, and they'll answer me and they'll say, "Hey, just to let you know, we've got a net that'll be starting up in about 20 minutes. You don't have to move, but just want to let you know." And the way I look at it, they were nice enough to come in there and give me notice ahead of time and even be a contact for me. So I'll usually tell them that, to make sure nobody else gets on that frequency. I'll stay, if it's 20 minutes, I'll stay another 18 or 19 minutes calling CQ POTA, and then I'll move off the frequency. And then, like I said earlier about FT4, FT8, or CW, reverse peaking network will respot you as long as you're being heard. And don't forget to be safe, enjoy the experience, and have fun most of all. And one of the newest tips that I can recommend really well is, for like me, I have multiple bags of different equipment that I use for my POTA activations. So make you a list and laminate it and then put it in your bag. That way, every time when you pack your bag back up, you can look at that list, make sure everything's in there. And then when you get out there the next time, everything that's in your bag. This is my list for my 891 bag. The only thing that I don't natively keep in there, which the rig expert's not always in there, but I don't natively keep my coax or an antenna in there because I may use a different antenna every time, and I usually carry 2 or 3 length of coax with me. That way, if I have to, adapt to the settings that I'm in. And in your spotting tips, if you don't have cell service to spot yourself and the bands are not doing too good, you don't want to wait for somebody to answer you and ask them to spot. If you have the ability to do APRS, then you can just send a APRS message to AP spot, and then you're just going to put in the message, you're going to put the exclamation point, space POTA, space US dash whatever the park number is, and then space your frequency, space the mode that you're using, and then space any type of comment that you want to put in there. And then if you have the ability to do WinLink, you can send a WinLink email to potagw@outlook.com. In the same way, in the subject line, you're going to put spot, space, your call sign, space, park number, space, frequency, space, mode, space, comment. And then if you're out doing an activation and don't have service, or even if you're not doing an activation, if you're just camping or out playing radio and you want to be able to see the spots, then send a email to potagw@outlook.com, and then in the subject put view spots. And then when you check for the reply email, it's going to show you all the stations that are spotted, their frequency information, when they were last spotted, the modes that they're using, all that good information. All right. Does anybody have any questions about anything? Going once, going twice.
Yeah, I'll shoot here.
Or I
How
was going to say,
bad?
everybody fall asleep.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah. How bad is it to get parks added to the park list? I know, just like looking at the map here around, the Fayetteville, Taft area, southern Middle Tennessee. There's not a lot out there to go activate. So
Yeah, the biggest thing is, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge. It depends on exactly what the POTA staff is working on. You can email the mapping coordinator for Tennessee and say, hey, is it potentially possible to get this park added? But a lot of the parks that people ask about are like city parks or local parks. They're not a state or national park or something that's a state or federally funded land. And
oh, gotcha. I wasn't sure exactly what the criteria were, where it fell for getting approved.
And the biggest thing about POTA is the park entity can't be on private land. But if you notice in Tennessee, for instance, I don't know about other states, but in Tennessee, a lot of wildlife management areas in Tennessee are private land, but it's land that is leased to the state of Tennessee for hunting. So those people know that, they're leasing it to the state. The state's got it out as public land, so they have to be prepared for people to show up and use that land.
Appreciate the info.
Yeah, but yeah, if you know of a specific place, maybe do some checking into it and see if it is a state or federal property, and reach out to that mapping coordinator. Yeah, I wished I had put aside a little bit closer to my house because it's usually on average a good 30-35 minute drive from my closest POTA site. So I wish I had somewhere a little bit closer. All right. Any other questions?
Hey, Will, what's your normal power level when you're doing your POTUS?
If I'm doing, well, depending on what radio I take, if I take the 705, then it's always 5 watts on digital, 10 watts on phone. If I take the QDX, it's just 5 watts period. And then usually with the 891, I usually won't do over about 25 watts on digital, and usually stay around 40 or 50 watts on phone. Because I'm one of these people leaving in the shack most of the time. I never do a full duty cycle on my radios just because of the peace of mind for me. Didn't even notice you snuck in here, Matt.
Oh yeah, I'm sneaky.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening to my spiel, and hopefully, you picked up a tip or a trick that you didn't know before. And like I always tell everybody after the years of public safety, that none of us know everything, and you can always learn something different. Just like I've been a CPR instructor for 20 something years, and had to do get monitored for a class this morning before I go to my refresher class. Learned something new today. So
Will, I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream. If